Hey everyone, Vincent Fleming here. I'm going to do a little demonstration here on the Easy Eye rotation system. I've had several people ask me if I would, so we're going to try to do this and explain a few things and shorten this up as much as possible. So let's take a look at it real quick. And what this system is, it consists of this tool. This black part of this tool is the arbor. This half rounded circle is the cutter that goes in it. It has a set screw in it. This is a 32 millimeter. You can buy these cutters in 8 different sizes. That runs from 24 millimeter, which that's what this one is. You would just take that set screw out and switch this one in. And it runs up to a 38 millimeter, something you would use for an elk or Cape buffalo or something like that. And they're in 2 millimeter increments that run all the way, like I say, from 24 to 38 millimeter. And then the other part is the back. This is what goes on the back of the eyeball. And what this is it's the same size as this cutting tool. The cutting tool is a few thousandths bigger, but it's going to cut the foam out, and we're going to replace the foam with this. And then this eye back is attached to an eyeball, which is going to make it somewhat into a round eye. It's not perfectly round because the eye that we're used to using here with the corneal bulge and stuff on it, that's what's making it not perfectly round. But what we're really after is a center point in this eye. Because when something rotates, it's rotating around a center point. So that's one reason we're putting this back on. And as far as attaching these backs, what I like to do is I'll take a washer. You'll get you a couple of washers and you'll set your back in it. I like using 5-minute epoxy. You can use super glue if you want, but you want to put a thin coating right around the edge because that's all it's going to be touching the back is the rim of the eye. And you're going to want to attach it onto the eye just like this. And you're going to want to hold your fingers on like 4 corners, north, south, east, and west, so the eye is dead center. In other words, there's no lip hanging over here on the eye back, and set it back on this washer till that kicks off. Now, if you use 5-minute epoxy and you set this on sideways a little bit, this eye will slide on that 5-minute epoxy. So in other words, it'll come off like that and it'll stop. And you need to keep an eye on it if it does that before it kicks, and just move it back over and center it back up so that it's just like this eye. Now let's look at some of the anatomy of the eye as far as what we're talking about here. And here I've got a photo. Let me get back over at the beginning of it here. This is the eyeball that I took out of a fresh deer. And I trimmed it up and got all the tissue off of it that I possibly could without cutting into the eyeball itself, and I froze it. I got it back out and I'm measuring it here in thousandths from front to back. It's actually 1 inch and it's 275 thousandths from front to back. Here it is from top to bottom, same measurement. And here it is from front to back, same measurement. So that eye, with those measurements, the 3 ways you can measure it is pretty consistent. So as far as the center point of that eye being dead in the center, that's going to work out good for us. Now here's an eyeball that we're mounting. This is the Tohican, like I said, meter 650 eye without the extra brown. And it's the same as the real eye measurements, front to back, top to bottom. And here's the eyes, a real one and the glass eye sitting side by side. Here it is from the profile side. And here's the measurement of the eye that we're using from back to front. It's just a couple thousandths difference. We're only talking the thickness of a hair or so. Okay, so now what we're going to do, since we've gone over our reference on the eyeball itself, is we're going to look at the reference on how we're going to set this in our form. And we're going to use a skull. And what we're looking at here is the eye socket, where the eye actually sits. It sits in here just like this right here and works. But what we're looking at here is this little hole right back here where the optic nerves go off the back of the eye. And what I'm going to do is, if you'll notice with the way this skull is made, it's sort of going in a downward angle. But I'm going to put my finger in here right on that little hole where the optic nerves are. And I'm going to center my finger up in the eye socket right in the center. Hold this skull level with this deer's head's level, and if you'll notice, my finger's going in the downward angle. So when we drill our socket out, we're going to drill it downward a little bit. If you go in straight, you'll be fine, but just don't go up. With the cant that comes in the forms, some people have a tendency to want to try to drill that out perfectly. You don't want to do that. You want to go in a downward or straight angle. The other thing I want you to look at here is I'm going to hold the skull, put my finger back in that center spot again, center of the eye socket, and I'm going to hold it up. And I'm going to try to just pull my finger out and lay it right on top of this and that angle that it was in, and you'll notice it's just about coming to the center of this skull on this line this drew here. That's about where the mannequin stops at and our antler set goes in. So when we drill our hole out, we're going to be aiming here, and we're going to be going downward a little bit, okay? All right, so the next step is our mannequin itself. And what we're going to do, I've taken this mannequin and I went on, and I don't normally do this here in the shop, but I've done this to help you guys out. I just took a little bit of a magic marker and marked around the rim right here, and that's so that when this right here sort of gets cut out, you know that you're getting pretty close to having the depth correct. But that's just a visual thing. We'll talk about depth in a moment. But the first thing we want to do is I want to check sort of the symmetry of the eyes on the form when it comes in. So what I like to do is I come right here in the center of the nose at the narrowest point, and I make a mark. Now you don't always have to use the seam line. Sometimes it'll be off to one side a little bit, but just put a mark right dead in the center. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put one in the straight down under the eyes, and I'm going to put it right in the center of the head. In other words, if I sawed this head in half, that's where that mark would be. And I'm going to take a pair of calipers now, and I'm going to measure from that mark. I'm also putting a mark right here at the back of the lacrimal crease, right where it falls into the eye, where the eye set is on both sides. Now the reason I do that is easy to see it now from the front. Don't mark it all the way down, it just enough of a mark that you can see it from the front. And I'm going to measure to the back of that lacrimal crease, or where it falls off, and then I'm going to wheel around here and measure that side, and that's dead on the money. Then I'm going to come down here and do the same thing. I'm going to measure here, and I'm going to come over here and measure this side, and it's the same. Now, if that was off a little bit, especially this up and down, what that's going to do with me is, the next step I'm going to do is level my mannequin up, and I'm going to lay a level here on the bridge of the nose for stability, and I'm looking across the back line, and I'm going to move it up here and put it on those two marks that I made. And if you'll notice, that head on this mannequin is dead level. If this measurement I took here a minute ago had been off just a 1/16 of an inch, and I would have leveled the mannequin up from the eyes, the head would have been canted. If that happens, you'll have to fix that. You want to try to make sure that this measurement measures the same, and then that way when you level your head up, your head will be level. So that's where we sort of want to try to work from, is from that level head. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to put a mark right in the center of the eye socket on both sides. And while I've got that mark in my level in my hand, I could come up here and put the level on those two marks, and look at there, it's dead level. That's because everything else measured out. Or you can take your calipers, you can come in here and you can measure here, do the other side in here, and do that side. So the thing with this eye system is two things. That's location and depth. Now we've already established our location of where we're going to drill our hole at, and that's these two marks on both sides. The next thing's depth. You're going to have 3 points of reference to check depth. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the cheek area here, and we're going to get right in the center, and we're just going to make a mark. And I'm going to come over here on this side and just sort of eyeball a spot and sort of like put it close to the same spot. Then we're going to take our calipers and measure here. Then we're going to measure the other side and make sure it's the same. And then we're going to come here and measure here and come over here and make sure it's the same, so that those two marks on the cheeks are in the same spot. That's 1 point of reference for depth. The second point is going to be the bottom eye socket, and the other one's going to be the eyeball. So what we're going to do now is take an eye that we're going to use. We're going to find the front of the eye, and we're going to put it in the eye, the mannequin, so it's in the front. And I'm going to hold that in its place. And what I'm looking at now is two things. I'm looking to see if I'm good and happy with the depth of the eye. I mean, if it's good, then we're good to go. We can check our depth right now. If I feel like the eye's in too far in this form, I need to pull it out a little bit. I'm going to make an adjustment when I drill the hole out, and vice versa if it needs to go in deeper. All eyes are not the same. If you order different eyes and you measure the profile or the height of them, they'll vary. So this being one with a corneal bulge on it, and this form's made, this is a OTS form, so it's really made for their eye, which is a pretty high profile eye. This is pretty close. The other thing I'm looking at is I want to look right in the front, when me standing in the front, and see what I see in the front. And I can just barely see a little bit of the white. And when we start drilling this hole out, and I'm going to put the eye with the back on it, checking the depth over and over, I want to put this eye back in just like it is now to check the depth. If I put it in backwards or straight or too far forward or too far back, I'm moving that corneal bulge either further back or further forward or up or down, and I'm not going to get a true depth of what I'm checking right now. So I want to check and make sure that's exactly the same way. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the back edge of this pencil and put on this mark, and then I'm going to come up here and lay it on the eye socket, and I'm going to move it back and forth. And if you'll notice right there, it's just barely off the eyeball. Sometimes you'll do this and you might touch the eye and have a teeny little gap here. It's amazing how all the forms I've tried to check this on, how consistent they all are. So when we drill this eye out, I'm gonna come back and check it a time or two till I get this eye barely missing this pencil. Now, if I wanted to move the eye out a little bit and have all three of them touching it the same, that's fine. One thing you'll want to look at, if you look at a lot of live deer, and it's just most of the time, not all the time, when you square up on the deer and look at the eye, you won't see skin at the back of the eye, right behind the eye. In other words, the back of the eye. Sometimes you will. It depends on the deer. Age has something to do with it, but that's what we're trying to do is get this depth, and that's the biggest thing. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we're going to take a drill bit here, and this drill bit is about the same width as the top on this, and we're going to drill this in to give us a pilot hole to go in. And one thing I almost forgot, and this is the most aggravating thing with this system, is we're going to take this pin right here and we're going to stick in right here, and we're aiming toward this point and we're going in a downward angle, and I'm going to go in, and I didn't hit no wood block at all. But this being an OTS form, and I know how the wood blocks lay in them, if I come back here to the back, right there's the wood block. But with cutting out a round circle or a half of a circle, you know, I may get back here and it may chew a little bit of it out, and that's fine, it'll cut it right out. But let's suppose you stick this pin in and you hit the wood block that far in. And if you take this cutter, we've got to go from the tip of this cutter to the back flat part. It's not going to fit. This is going to hit the wood. So what you'll have to come in here and do is take a pin and stick in here and try to find the top of the wood. So say the top of the wood block was there and the wood block was here. Well, we can drill a hole right in that wood and just cut right through it. But lots of times the wood block will sit right across the center of it, and you'll get on the bottom of it and he'll just scoot off of it. So what you'll have to do is, if you're going to use it and the wood block's in the way and you can't get a good crisp hole cut in it, you can try. And then if you see that you can't, just take a spade bit and cut that out, and you can foam fill it. And just put a little foam in it, a little piece of plastic over it and hold it. It don't have to be flat to start over again, because we're going to be cutting it out. Just check your depth. You already know what your depth is prior to coming to this step anyway, and you'll be fine. So we're going to take a drill, and we're going to stick it right there in our location point, and I'm just going to barely knock a little piece of foam out so my drill bit don't jump around. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look right down the shaft here to that center point, and I'm going to tilt my drill up, and I'm going to drill a hole in. You heard it hit the wood block way back in there. I drilled in about that far. You don't have to drill in that far. But now we've got us a pilot hole for our cutter to go into. Now we're going to take this cutter, and when you put these in the drill, whatever you do, if you like to hit the button and chuck it up, make sure your hand's way back here. If you get your hand up here around these edges and you chuck that drill right there, it's going to eat your fingers up. So don't do that. And what you want to learn to do is use your drill in a variable speed. You know, don't just pull the trigger back all the way. You'll have a mess. I'm going to lower this down just a little bit. And what we're going to do is you're going to have to push a little bit when you start cutting, but once it starts cutting, the first cut, it might grab it a little bit. Just back off and just hit your trigger, you know, about like so. You'll see, and it'll just cut out a perfect little half circle. And like I said, I darkened this in, so you'll see that it will, when it pretty much sort of disappears, it'll be good. Now, you're going to cut more foam out of the top than you do the bottom, because of the fact that we're cutting in a downward angle, and the sculptor's already put the cant in the eye coming out. So let's set this up here. We're going to look right down the shaft, and we're going here, and we're going to tip it up. And we're going to start cutting. Now what you want to try to do when you cut this out is you want to cut all this flat area out. You don't want to get going in here and start cutting part of the foam off up here on the top or on the bottom. If you do, you're moving your whole eye socket. And you want to keep your drill pretty steady. You don't want to be wallering it around or you'll make a real big hole. And if you've not done this before, I recommend, like stopping here and just checking to see what your eye looks like. I know that's not deep enough, but we've taken an eye here that's got a back glue on it. We're going to stick it in. We're going to get the front of the eye back up here like it was when we first checked it. And we put our pencil on here. You can see we're hitting the glass way before we hit the mannequin. And if you remember prior, we had a little gap between our pencil and our glass. So we've got to go in quite a bit more. That's getting pretty close right there. I'm going to take this little file here that we have, and I'm going to knock a little bit of that edge off just around that. There'll be a little bit of a rim. And then we'll stick our eye back in here. That's getting close. If you see right there, we're touching all three at the same time. And actually, I'm going to leave it right there. I like the way that looks. Now, if you'll notice how this eye spins around in here, that's what we're after. So now when this thing, once we mount it, even tomorrow, if you bag the deer after it's been mounted, you'll still be able to move this eye if you need to tweak it a little bit. The secret is, or the thing I like to do is make sure the foam is touching this. The only thing that's going to be between this and this is glue. If it's touching it, then you're great. If you dig this out too much, you're either going to have to put clay in it and be careful as you twist it, or you actually could put a little bit of foam back in it and dig it back out, or you could actually wax the back of this, put a little bit of Bondo back here so that it don't squish up halfway around the eye, and press your eye back into the Bondo until it gets the depth. You can put it in that Bondo and mash it until you got the depth. But the Bondo kick, it'll pop right back off, and then you got you a round surface in the back. So what we're going to do now that we've got our eye where it fits in here, and it'll rotate. So basically what we've done, let's just look at this. Here's this mark that we made on our mannequin prior. That's the center of our eye. So wherever this eye rotates, that mark's going to stay consistent in the center. But if I set this back in here, right there's what we had before we started. Just like that. And all we done is cut the foam out and replaced it with this piece of plastic so that we've got rotation. Okay? Now, it works good on anything. I mean, especially like a cat. I'm going to show this right quick while it's on my mind. I've got these cut out with a cat because, I mean, something with round pupils. And you can see, I mean, just as far as rotating them goes, how neat it is. You can move them left, right, whatever you need to do. So when you mount a cat up, these are 24 millimeter. Let's see if I can get that side to pop out. You can see the back on it. And this is cut out with a 24 millimeter, and it just sets in. When you're doing cats or something, you can just get your pupils pretty close to the center and go on and get your eyelids and all done, mount your cat. Then once you get it done, if you need to move an eyelid up a bit or down a little about the eye to get the pupil in the center or up toward the top where you want them, if you want to put the rotation in them, then you can move them at that time. So it works really good on cats. All right, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to set an eye for you here real quick. We're going to take a little bit of Pro 1 hide paste, and we're going to smear a little bit right in this eye socket. And what this does is gives it some lubricant to help the eye move around a little bit freer. And plus, as it dries with that plastic touching that glue, it's going to really glue it down. And I've rolled up 2 little pieces of clay like this. And why I've got these is, this is just modeling clay. I usually use critter clay. And I usually mix my critter clay with some Pro 1 to give it some a little bit more sticky, so it'll stick to the form a little bit better than it would before. And we're just going to take our eye, we're going to put the front of it in, And we're going to move it around in here so it's got that glue on it. I'm going to rotate this eye out toward the deer's left, and I'm going to put this little piece of clay in right here just to lock that eye in. And then I'm going to take this little piece and put it across the top and lock it in, because we want clay all the way around this eye so that it's solid. And the next thing I'm going to do now I've got the eye in is I'm going to check my pupil to see that it's level. And what we want to do is get on the side of the head here, and that pupil needs to come up just a little bit in the front, so we'll just rotate it. And that's pretty close right there. Now, as far as the can in the eye, this has been the lacrimal crease where the coruncle's going to be. If I put a level on that and leveled it up, the pupil will set above that line. So basically, it sets above the coruncle, about an 1/8 to a 1/16 above it, somewhere in that ballpark. If the deer's head's level and nothing's crazy is going on with the eyes. And the back corner of the eye will be about where the pupil is. I see a lot of people get the back corner of their eye too low. Even with this, it sets up here a little bit higher. Now, if the deer's eye was real open and it's rounded in the back, it's going to be round and it's going to be hard to tell where the pupil is. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to build our bottom eyelid back. I'm going to take a little piece of clay here and roll it out. Get it pointed. And we're just going to lay it right here. And I'm going to lay it right up on the glass and get the shape that I want showing right across the top. I'm not worried about what's going on down here on the bottom yet. And then I'm going to flatten it out and just work this clay down. And I usually put too much, and we're just going to rake a little of it off. Till we get the eyelid where we want it on the bottom. And usually the lowest point on that bottom eyelid is going to be back here, back to the back third. So in other words, we can flip from the back of the eye about 1/3 of the way. That's about where the lowest point will be. And now we're going to do the top one. We're going to do the same thing. Now, depending on the age of the deer, I mean, you know, if you can have a big heavy brow, or a young deer be a little bit bug-eyed, so I mean it's gonna vary. So, and plus from form to form make a difference on how much clay it takes. These OTS forms don't take a lot of clay, and I laid that on to get that same shape across the top. And if you'll notice, the back corner's above the lacrimal crease up here, and we're just going to feather that into the form. And the highest point of the eye on the top is going to be up here in the front third of the eye. Now, I'm not going to sit here and spend a lot of time with the eye, but you can see we've got a decent shape going on. And then as far as the top eyelid goes, or the brow, where the crease is going to be, I like to take a little piece of clay, roll it out about the length that the crease should be, fat in the center and pointed on the ends. And then we're going to flatten it out, and we're going to roll it over so it'll make it look like a quarter of a moon. And we're going to lay it right across the top where this should be. And then we're just going to feather that in. Right back into the mannequin. Now, a lot of people don't like putting the crease in the eye prior. You know, your skin will show you lots of times where the crease is supposed to be. But this is just the way I've done it for years and years and years, and it's just the way I like doing it. And I can manipulate the crease or the clay to fit the crease the way I have it in here. Now that I've got that done, and I call this undermounting. You got to imagine we got to put the skin on here yet. So when we put the skin on there, the eyelids are going to come out a little further, the eye's going to shut down a little bit. So you got to allow for that. And if I put a straight edge here on this bottom eye socket, I touch the glass. You see the distance between the tool and the eyelids and the eyebrow? When I mount this deer and I do this, it'll touch here and it'll actually touch these right before it touches the glass. So that's how much difference it's going to make when you add the skin plus the hair on it. If I brought this out to where it touched before the glass did and then mounted it, my eye's going to look way sunk in on the head. Now the thing with the eye system, let's just suppose I get this mounted. I'd like to put my nicotinating membranes in the day that I mounted, and I decide, okay, I can't see enough white. I need to roll it a little bit. All I'm going to do is take my finger right there, and I'm going to grab the eye, and I'm going to roll it out to where you can see more white. If I decide that's too much white, I'm just going to put my finger on it, and I'm going to roll it in like that. And if I decide, well, darn, I want the deer looking the other way, I'm just going to take my finger on it. I'm going to get rid of the white, and if you'll look now, the white's showing in the back of the eye. Now, lots of times, if this, particularly like the way I have it now, if this deer was looking to the deer's right, the deer would want to pull the brow up right here and try to look over, help look over the bridge of the nose. When you get into doing that, what you'll want to do is you might want to sand some of this down, and actually you could come back about 1/4 of an inch on the eye socket itself. If you'll come right here on this side, you could just cut all this off and do all this back in clay. If you know you're going to have the deer looking this way, you can go on and do that and raise the brow up as you set the eye. But you actually could do that if you had that in clay. Now with the skin already on, you could just take your finger right here and push all that up and move the brow. Since this was clay, you could pinch and move that over. So instead of just worrying about the eye itself rotating, you got to put the life look back into it, as far as, you know, if the eyes are, you know, like say if he's going to look this way, this brow might want to go up a little bit, or vice versa. So say I want to roll that back and I want the white showing in the front. And suppose the deer twisted his head this way or something, that means the white's going to start showing in the top of the eye. Just like that right there, all the way across. And then vice versa, if the head rolled the other way, the white would show across the bottom of the eye. So that's the thing with the eye rotation system, is you're not just dead set on what you can do. You can move the eye around and tweak it and get it, you know, where you want to have it at. So that's pretty much the way the system works. I hope this helps out anybody that has this and needs some help with it. And if you're interested in giving it a try, you can purchase this from Mackenzie's, or you can just get a hold of me through Facebook, and we'll get something to you. These eye backs are sold separate for each size, all 8 sizes. The cutters, you'll just need one, and depending on what size blade that you need, they're all sold separately. And so thanks a lot. Thanks for everybody that's bought this and gave it a try. There's been several people using some really, really big shows all the way up to the World Show, and won some world titles with it and stuff. So it's really nice to know that some people are liking it. So thanks a lot. Have a good day.